Write what you know. It's something I'm sure anyone who's ever told friends, family members, or even strangers that you're a writer has heard. But is it necessarily something that advice that you should actually take on board? Originally, my answer would have been for sure a no, but I really thought about the question this week thanks to someone in the writing community on Twitter, who I will read out the comment of at the end, pointing out that the way it's phrased might actually change your perspective on it and your outlook as well. So it's broadly a lot about outlook, write what you know, being a term of advice. The first part I'm going to talk about is the slightly more positive part, the part where you, and then I'm going to move on to moving to talking about the negative aspect of people telling you to write what you know. So the positive of write what you know is it's, in a sense, it's stay in your comfort zone. And a lot of people, no matter who they are, will tell you that staying in your comfort zone in terms of writing can be a good thing. Like John Grisham, for example. He is a lawyer and he writes law thrillers. It makes a lot of sense. And he actually got inspired to write through his own law, his own cases that he's done. But for the rest of us, it isn't always a good piece of advice. It really depends on who you are, your whole outlook. But write what you know could be taken if you have a very positive outlook on it, and if you really trust the person that's telling you. It could just be an invitation, you know. It could be them telling you, maybe research this before you write about it, which is actually very good advice, and it's advice that I will readily give all of you. You should definitely research what you're going to write about. However, there is a gnawing sense of dread every time someone asks you this question as a writer. I've had it a lot whenever anyone's told me to just write what I know, or why don't you just write what you know? I used to find it extremely offensive and extremely annoying when someone said that to me, because it's effectively cutting out entire genres to me. Well, that's how I used to see it anyway. Like, especially with fantasy and science fiction, when they say write what you know, it doesn't really work. Like, a lot of writers can't write what they know. Tolkien didn't know what orcs looked like because they don't exist. He didn't know what they looked like, he made it up. But you could also argue that he did know in his brain. But I really don't think that would have been how he would have taken such a question. And the whole concept of someone telling you to write what you know is usually in a very, like, it's, at least whenever I've been asked, it seems like people are telling me to only write autobiographically. And what I mean by that is only write from your own personal experiences. Never write from a different experience. And this very much goes against why I write to begin with. It's the whole reason I started writing, and the whole reason I enjoy writing, is because it builds my tolerance for empathy. Because if I write from a different perspective of a character who I have no relation to, it helps me to relate to them more. And someone telling you only write what you know, to a lot of people, would imply, for me, for example, to only write white male protagonists. And I have written white male protagonists. I will continue to write white male protagonists, but I don't want to only write white male protagonists. And I feel like there are enough only white male protagonists for this, in terms of reading and in terms of books and in the genre of fiction, that we don't really need that many more. But that's a conversation for a different episode. So yeah, write what you know can really, depending on your outlook, it can be different. But there is other positive aspects, like write what you know. I've honestly kind of followed this in terms of Ruby Rain, my first book. It follows like psychological issues, like both of the characters have a mental illness, and I did, of course, research that mental illness, at the time, and I have always had a very keen interest in psychology and psychosis and specifically mental illnesses, and what makes people different and what makes people with mental illnesses different to mentally stable people. So people tell me to write what I know in that sense. I really enjoy when people tell me to do that, because it's like, yeah, I do. Thank you, basically. But I always felt like I always still feel like whenever someone tells you to write what you know, they don't actually mean it in terms of that. And I feel like it completely ignores every single, or not every single genre, but a lot of the most popular genres. Like I just said, fantasy and science fiction. But it doesn't just ignore that. I mean, this is a stereotype, and I am in no way saying that this is true, but a stereotype about erotica authors is that they're all very, very pent up, and that they don't have that much sex. And they're writing about characters that have a lot of sex. And people buy those books. So to some people, they must be really good. And they obviously didn't follow this advice. So I guess in closing, it really matters more on perspective than anything else. But as the one member of the writing community that actually responded to me, I'll get up if my phone will stop being annoying, who was at Edwin Beatnik, said, "Write what you know is an invitation to do more, read more, and know more. The more you know, the more you can write. In my view, learning as much as you can is the best way of writing more." So yeah, this is the post that I told you in the beginning, changed my whole perspective on this. And yet I do agree with some of their points, but I still feel like but this isn't just about write what you know. I'm fine with being told write what you know, but I'm more talking about write only what you know. So only ever write about stuff that applies to your own personal experiences. Never, ever, ever write anything differently. And just in closing, I'd just like to say I don't agree with that. Fiction is meant to be make-believe, even if it is grounded in reality. It's meant to be make-believe, but it can also be grounded in reality. But the whole definition of fiction is it didn't happen. So yeah, that's just my closing thoughts, and thank you for watching this episode of Indie Opinions. The finale of Season 1, I should say, at the end of this video, that this is the end of Season 1. So please go back and watch the other 9 episodes of this. I'm really proud of what I've done. And I will see you in October for Season 2. Right on.